measuring it when it broke out of the 13-year trading range in April of 2013. But wherever you want to start your count from, secular bull markets run 15 to 20 years. So this thing's got years left, and basically nobody believes it.
Years left for the stocks. What about the bonds? I mean, the idea being that typically low yields and even lower yields means that growth is going to slow, and that's typically been bad news. Now it just means we're in a new normal, whatever you want to put. But do you think that we're going to see higher yields ahead, or do you think that this is just sort of the new normal where everything continues to rally?
I think that interest rates are eventually going to go up. I don't think they're going up in the short term. A lot of the decline in interest rates is due to negative convexity and hedging. And it's not a commentary on the economy. I travel all over the world. The economy's strong all over the world. I mean, restaurants are full in New York City. Restaurants are full in Paris, London, Warsaw. So I don't think the message that a lot of people are interpreting from the bond market that the economy is going to slow, I think it's the wrong message.
Hey, Jeff, we look at the performance in 2019, mostly in the equities, mostly, if not entirely, multiple expansion. Do you expect earnings growth? I mean, does the next leg up have to be driven by earnings growth in your perspective?
Yeah, I do think I'm using $177 for bottom-up operating earnings this year. And my models show that in the current low interest rate environment that a fair market multiple is somewhere between 19.2 and 20.2, and that gives you a price target of somewhere between 3,400 and 3,600 for this year on the S&P 500.
Will tech continue to drive it forward?
Yeah, I think earnings are, they've been kind of soft here in the near term. I think they're going to reaccelerate in the back half of this year as the economy strengthens. I was in Raleigh last week speaking to retail investors, and I was in Chicago speaking at the Traders Convention. And folks, people are not just cautious; they're scared to death. And that's because they don't understand the main premise of the stock market, which is managing risk and avoiding the big loss. And this is not the way bull markets end. Think about the psychology in 98, 99, and early 2000. That is how bull markets end. They don't end with everybody scared to death.
Jeff Stout, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your comments and your optimism, certainly. Capital Wealth Planning Chief Investment Strategist Jeff Stout joining us on the phone. Permanent or secular bull market he's calling for, and he thinks that has some years to run here.
Well, talking about running, someone just ran in. Still,
isn't he always calling for? I love Jeff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't he often though a bull?
Oh yes, bull. Yeah.
Secular,
but I love him. Look, great energy.
What great energy is going to be at the Super Bowl? Like, I did that. All right, I guess who's going there?
All I care is about leaving cold New York. No. I care about the game.
Can I paint a picture? Or am I not allowed to paint a picture?
You can paint.
Okay, Carol comes in here.
I am what I am.
Blue curlers in her hair, running in here.
I've been taping in like 5 minutes.
Okay, carry on. What are you going to be doing in the Super Bowl?
So Super Bowl, really cool thing that radio and television, everybody connected with the Super Bowl. It's called Radio Row. So we're going to be sitting among athletes and coaches and you name it, anybody connected with the game, sponsors, but not with curlers in my hair.
It's okay. The look, actually, it suits you tremendously. I will say it definitely seems like a fun, in a good way, that you can rock anything. There you go.
Back at you. So it's really cool. So we're going to get, there's so much money in the game, so much going on. And then we have Bloomberg Live, a Power Players Summit. So we're going to be talking about sustainability. We're going to be talking about with, players, about building a brand. A lot of good stuff.
I love how they're going to pretend to work while they're out there. They're like, okay, we're not just here watching.
Our hotel is on the beach. Can I say that?
And then we're going to talk about other serious things after the game.
Also, check out Bloomberg Business Week. Great stuff. Covers Tesla, which is very timely this week.
Yeah, all-time highs. Carol Massar, thanks so much for literally running into our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Carol Massar, co-host of Bloomberg Business Week, alongside some guy named Jason Kelly. I hear he's pretty good. Coming up, Bloomberg Markets. Lisa and I are here with you for another 2 hours. This is Bloomberg.
Asset manager. let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
The Sky Broadband sale ends soon. Get a massive 30% off superfast broadband and anytime calls. It's now just £25 a month for 18 months, so you can stream, share, play or tweet in the living room, bedroom, hey, any room you like. It's usually £37 a month, but now it's just £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. So what are you waiting for? Offer ends 6th of Feb. Visit sky.com today. Sky Fibre network areas. Speeds vary by location. Prices may change during contract terms apply.
Peoples of London, don't be like Sergei, slaving Monday to Friday, then so frazzled by weekend, you no cook Sunday lunch. You need me, Alexander, to save the day.
Oh, so Sunday lunch means meerkat meals?
Exactly. Get 2 for 1 on food with meerkat meals at your local favorites, like Little Napoli, when you buy through Compare the Market. Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to take a deeper look at the everything rally. In particular, we're going to look at the chip stocks leading the way today. Plus, we're going to be taking a look at wine and the potential fallout for wine producers on the heels of threats of tariffs on French wine. Right now, though, let's head over to John Tucker for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, the technology stocks, they're leading U.S. gains. This comes after Intel gave a relatively bullish revenue forecast. Now, overseas, the stocks Europe 600 index, that pushed toward a record close on its biggest advance in 5 months. The dollar edging higher before the purchasing managers report a little later today. Treasury yields dipping, the yen and gold holding steady. Ben Ammons over at Medley Global Advisor says the purchasing manager report from Germany this morning is encouraging for the entire global economy.
Remember about a year or so ago when the first time when the PMI data was contracting, that people got very concerned about a recession in Germany and maybe a global recession. So it is indicating that actually those fears were unfounded.
Now, while traders remain cognizant of the rotavirus, the virus that's taking place across China and shutting down access to virtually shutting down access to certain cities, etc., stocks do remain close to all-time highs. The corporate earnings are also topping expectations, and a slew of data this month also validating forecasts for recovery in the global economy. Right now, we have the Dow Jones Industrial Average up 110 points. That's up 0.4%. 29,270. The S&P 500 up 2 points at 3328, and the Nasdaq Composite Index up 30 points. That's up 0.3%. Right now we're at 94.32. As far as the VIX goes, volatility essentially unchanged this morning. 10-year yield is at 171. That's up right now down by 1 basis point as the price is up by 5.30 seconds. And crude oil is lower. Brent right now down 1.4%. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Lisa.
John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. As John is just reporting, we have green on the screen, a little bit of a risk on here as we finish up the trading week. To get a sense of where the real action is in the markets, we welcome Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
Oh, there are a few things going on, Paul. I'm just struck by the fact that Intel is now trading at its highest price since September 2000. After
that sounds like it's wearying you.
Well, I mean, considering the run-up you had, late 90s, early 2000, as the internet-driven bull market of that period was peaking, it does kind of stand out. I mean, Intel still has a ways to go to reach its high from August 2000, but not all that much. I mean, one more positive earnings report would do it. And their fourth quarter numbers beating analyst average estimates in Bloomberg survey, their projections for this year coming out ahead. It's all about data center equipment.
Yeah, cloud. I remember last year people were saying maybe we've gotten to peak cloud. This maybe points to the fact we have not gotten to peak cloud.
It sure doesn't seem that way, and there's been a lot of anticipation to focus on the chip industry specifically, that it would start to come out of a slump. And increasingly, you're seeing indications that that's going to be the case. I mean, and Intel is just the latest example of that. No doubt as we go through fourth quarter results, there may well be more examples of companies whose business seems to be picking up.
Meanwhile, I'm struck by the fact that we are seeing the everything rally persist, and I'm wondering whether this is just more of the same, people expecting this to be Goldilocks, or if just on a macro level, if perhaps the macro narrative is different from the micro stories that are really driving the gains that we're seeing in this melt up today.
Well, you look at today's trading. I mean, the moves among the main industry groups in the S&P 500 are not that extreme. Tech stocks, though, leading the way, and a lot of other groups are just kind of sitting around, moves of less than 0.5%, up or down. Energy's lower. Of course, we've seen that story before. So it really looks like a familiar market that way. I'll tell you one area, though, and I got to thank Matt Maley over at Miller Tabak for pointing it out. Utility stocks. You think about interest rate sensitive area of the market, that's it.
Should be doing well.
And in fact, if you look at the Select Sector Spider Utilities ETF, Exchange Traded Fund, as Maley did, the ticker XLU, it's now up for the 11th straight day.
Interesting.
Which tells you something, and it's at a record, by the way.
So it tells you what? That people are defensive?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. The narrative on the Federal Reserve has been rates aren't going to move much this year. You figure if that's the case, then it really doesn't pay necessarily to go, into these utility stocks, which are all about their dividends, as an alternative for income-seeking investors to bonds. And yet you're seeing this kind of movement in a group which, let's face it, I mean, you don't tend to get those sort of extremes. You know, the ETF's up about 7% over this streak, which is not exactly extreme. Nonetheless, it does kind of stand out.
A lot of action this morning in the credit card sector. Looking at American Express hitting new highs again. What's going on there?
I thought you were going to be talking about some purchases that either you or I made over the week. They were planning to do over the weekend. A lot of activity on your credit card bill there. What do you say about that, Dave?
I have no idea what his credit card bill is like, for which I'm grateful. But I'll tell you, if you're not spending it on a Discover card, well, okay, that would explain something, because Discover shares are down 10%. You got a real contrast. And, this is something that popped up the other day with the regional banks. If you beat earnings estimates and you don't set aside as much for loan losses as analysts were expecting, your shares get beaten up. And that happened today, is happening today with both Discover and Synchrony Financial, which is private label credit cards.
Call me crazy, but if they're not putting as much aside, wouldn't that indicate that the credit performance of the loans has actually been better than people were expecting, and they're not expecting as many losses, which would be a positive, no?
True. Of course, it's relative to analyst estimates. So if the idea is you're lowballing the amount of money you're setting aside because you're being too optimistic about where the credit area is headed, then you can see why it is that these stocks would take the hits they're taking. Discover's down 10%, Synchrony's down more than 8.5%. The two biggest declines in the S&P 500 on the day.
Walt Disney Company shutting down temporarily Shanghai Disney. Stock's off about 0.5% here today.
Yeah, it's something. Obviously, Disney has so many pieces of their business. And, when you talk about them now, it's all about the streaming service, Disney Plus. It's not so much about the theme parks. That certainly doesn't help them to have, the parks shut down and some of the related attractions.
Hold on a second, Dave, actually. You say it's all about the streaming service and not about their amusement parks. That said, the amusement parks pay and the streaming service doesn't, right? So if we talk about that, aren't these typically very lucrative for Disney?
Well, they can be. Just taking a quick look on the Bloomberg terminal to see how the revenue breaks down at Disney. And, theme parks are a quarter of it. Media networks are a quarter of it.
See? Streaming negative.
Direct to consumer right now is 15%. And, of course, you've got the potential for more. Given the number of people who have signed up for Disney Plus, it may not be a moneymaker for them for a while, but is it a revenue generator? It's certainly proving to be that so far.
Yeah, the Parks and Resorts business has just been a consistent kind of double-digit earnings growth driver for this company, quarter in, quarter out. They continue to invest a tremendous amount of money. They invested over $5 billion in Shanghai, the biggest investment in parks since they opened, Disney World in Orlando. So big bet
just
there.
Just to give you a sense, a one-day ticket at Disney World is, basically $129, and that's not including all of the merchandise and everything else. I'm just throwing that out there.
If you're a Disney fan, and I know a few of them, you pay the price.
You pay the price. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for that. We appreciate it. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Well, hardly the most happiest place on earth, Paul, but in just a couple hours on Capitol Hill, House impeachment managers get one last day to make their case that President Trump should be removed from office. Today, the focus is on the obstruction of Congress charge. That's after lead manager Adam Schiff summed up the Democrats' case for abuse of power yesterday.
And you can't trust this president do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump.
White House counsel gets its turn for rebuttal starting tomorrow. President Trump complained about that on Twitter this morning, calling Saturday Death Valley in TV. In China, travel agencies have suspended group tours as the country races to contain coronavirus. It has killed at least 26 people. 2 college students at Tennessee Tech and Texas A&M are being tested. Dr. Nancy Masani is with the Centers for Disease Control.
The immediate risk to the American public is low,
However, this situation is evolving quickly, and I do expect more cases in the United States, as well as human-to-human transmission.
China's confirmed more than 800 cases. The World Health Organization has stopped short of declaring an international emergency. In Germany, 6 people are dead, several others hurt in a shooting in the southwestern town of Rot am See. Police say a suspect was arrested shortly after this incident near the town's train station. They say no other suspects are at large. The shooter appeared to know one or more of the victims. And this red headline just crossed the Bloomberg terminal. The Centers for Disease Control now says a second American case of coronavirus is confirmed. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folk.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
I'm a 40-year-old man that walked in there to get his high school diploma. It was very hard for me, but Miss Araceli, she gave me direction.
At age 47, Marco finished his high school diploma.
50% of getting your high school diploma is walking through those doors. The other 50% is doing the work.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Are you interested?
Fly with Cathay Pacific to over 70 destinations across Asia and Australia and move beyond the familiar. State-of-the-art cabins, world-class entertainment, and award-winning service, making sure you arrive ready to make the most of whatever lies ahead. Whether it's the endless white beaches of Bali, the mesmerizing metropolis of Tokyo, or the bustling markets of Hanoi, book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card. Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge, wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth. As he reaches...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is a live message from the Survivalist Network. There are reports of an impending zombie apocalypse reaching London. But don't panic. Our intel shows that for £199 a month with 0% APR representative, you can locally access the Toyota Hilux Invincible, the only vehicle with the build strength to withstand savage hordes of the undead. Once inside your Toyota Hilux, stay on this frequency for updates. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £10,246 when financed through Access Toyota by 31st March 2020. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
New year calling for a new kitchen? Get to B&Q for up to 5 years interest-free credit with no deposit on our new kitchen range. Hurry, offer ends 2nd of February. You can do it when you B&Q it. Minimum spend £8,500 for 5 years interest-free credit. Credit subject to status. B&Q PLC is a credit broker and works exclusively with the Targi Capital UK PLC, both authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Chilly January days in London are tough enough without a broken boiler.
Keep your home warm and working this winter with 2 years interest-free credit and your boiler installed by one of our expert engineers. Plus, you'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty. And we can even quote by video call after work or on weekends. Get a quote by the 29th of February, and you can also get £200 off a new boiler, or £400 off for our existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, hit a shot, faced off!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker, the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. For the major averages who've just turned mixed, the S&P 500 just turning red right now, down just about a point. Maybe concerns about the coronavirus growing. The S&P 500, 33.24 right now. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 62 points. That's up 0.2% at 29,224. The Nasdaq Composite Index 21 points higher. That's up 0.2% at 94.23. That kind of tells the story. They are technology companies. They're leading the Nasdaq higher and led by a sharp gain for chip maker Intel. And, of course, investors do continue to monitor developments, the effort to contain the virus outbreak in China. We have some support for the yen right now. The yen is at 109.38. That's a haven bid, up about 0.1% against the U.S. dollar. And also the 10-year yield, 170 right now. That is down 2 basis points as we have a bid to the benchmark, up 730 seconds in price. And crude oil, that is lower again. NYMEX crude down 89 cents, 54.70. That's a decline of about 1.6%. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, much of the focus on international trade has been between the U.S. and China, but there's also been rising rhetoric between the U.S. and France on a whole host of items, including wine. We have to figure out what's going on there. Nobody better to do that than with Tom Gearing. He's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Cult Wines Asset Management based in London. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us what's going on potentially with the French wine market and tariffs.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks so much for having me. Well, I mean, obviously the current sort of impasse between the France and the US over the digital service tax was, in one way, going to have a huge implication potentially on the French wine industry. And one particular region that I think would have suffered significantly would have been Champagne region. The Champagne, for example, US represents the biggest export market for 575 million euros, and the potential 100% tariff that they were looking to impose on French goods would have included Champagne. Could have been quite catastrophic, really, for the Champagne region, and would have been. I mean, I don't think you can underestimate the seismic impact that would have had on the global wine market, and in particular, the French wine market. But now that sort of ceasefire has been established between the two sides, I think what people have sort of forgotten about is that there already are tariffs imposed on EU wines, in particular French wines. And these were imposed back in October as a result of the dispute over Airbus. So if you actually look at European wines, and in particular French wines, they've been under fire considerably over the last few months. And we've already started to see the impact those tariffs have had on French wines in the global marketplace, and in particular the impact it's had with US importers cancelling orders that they had placed, cancelling on-primeur futures contracts they had in place. And, a lot of the wine owners, wineries, distributors, in Europe are understandably worried. And similarly in the US, a lot of the importers, merchants, distributors, again, are very concerned about what's going to happen over the next few months. So I think even though this is a good sign for the market, that they've decided to hold fire, we're not out of the woods yet, and it's very finely poised.
I have to ask the burning question in the room, Tom Gearing. How does one get into wine asset management?
So, I mean, my background, my family were passionate wine collectors. It's something that I've known about for a long time. But I really believe in the financial viability of wine as a diversification for an investment portfolio. Wine as an asset class is a tangible product. It's something that is fundamentally based on unique characteristics in that the greatest wines in the world are produced in very small quantities and they're consumed. So wine has a perfectly inverse supply curve. So there's a lot of history and romance around the product, but if you take some of that romanticism away and treat it as a financial asset, it has a lot of potential benefits to anyone investing it. So fine wine as an asset management concept, I think is something that's going to become more and more mainstream, over the years.
Paul, I will say that I treat it as a viable asset in the evening. Often. Right. It does work.
It does work. So, Tom, what are you buying right now? What are the wines that are promising the value right now?
Well, I mean, look, to keep it in the context of the conversation about the tariffs, Italian wines, the best Italian wines have done extremely well. They were the best performing sub-region last year in terms of price performance. If you look at some of the best wines that are produced in northern Italy, in particular in Piedmont, where the Nebbiolo grape is, the grape that's grown more than most, the wines in that region have gone up significantly in value. There's demand that's increasing because if you look at the quality of the wines that are being produced there in comparison to, say, the equivalent of Grand Cru Burgundy, there's quite a significant price gap and there's quite a significant price disparity. And I think that globally consumers, especially the top end of the market, where prices have increased, in particular for French wines, in particular for Burgundy, Grand Cru, for example, people are now starting to look outside that for value. Where else in the world can I buy into really, really high quality, small production wines, but that can still deliver outstanding experience?
Well, I guess that there's a question about wine when you say that it's a financial asset. I mean, it is, but you can consume it. And there's a question, are people buying these mainly as an investment vehicle? Do they expect them to be drunk at some point? I mean, is there sort of that end goal, or is it that they are being increasingly treated as financial assets?
Well, I mean, look, if you look at wine from a very basic perspective, the great wines in the world are actually made to be drunk in 10, 15, 20 years. So they need someone to carry that cost. They need someone to carry the cost of storage, of insurance of the wines, and making sure that they're kept in the optimum conditions. So the fact that wine as an asset, as a product, increases over time in value in most cases, provides the holder, the person who's carrying the cost, a financial incentive to do so. So regardless of whether your intentions on day one are to buy for purely collection purposes or whether you're buying purely for drinking purposes, the fact that wine increases in value gives you the financial incentive to actually hold and store these wines, which can be quite a costly exercise. So what I think is, as altruistic as you could be as a wine connoisseur, sometimes you don't know how much your preferences or your objectives in life might change over time. So with wine, it's, of course, first and foremost, a product that should be consumed, and a lot of people in the world are consuming these wines. Right. But from a secondary perspective, if you're a collector and you can get a financial benefit from doing so and end up drinking the wines for less in the future, or you can resell them and generate a profit, or you can come into the market as a pure investor and generate a very low risk-adjusted return, then I think it all adds to the overall greatness of the asset.
Tom Gearing, thank you so much for being with us. Tom Gearing, Chief Executive Officer of Cult Wines Asset Management, joining us by phone. I just want to bring you this update. We were talking earlier about the everything rally. It is persisting. 10-year yields now the lowest since October 31st. 2-year yields lowest since October 9th as it continues yields lower.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The S&P a little changed as investors are watching the developments of the deadly virus spreading from China. Officials in China widened their travel ban, yet the World Health Organization stopped short of calling the virus a global health emergency. Intel out with the bullish quarterly and full-year revenue forecast. They're driven by an increase in demand for chips that power large cloud computing centers. Intel said sales are outpacing normal industry trends. Southwest CEO Gary Kelly said he was caught off guard when Boeing said the 737 MAX's return will probably slip to mid-year. Kelly's unusually candid comments about Southwest's sole plane supplier reflects the mounting airline industry frustration with the grounding. And the FDA is warning that healthcare stations and servers made by General Electric may be vulnerable to cyber attack. The devices are used to display patient data like heartbeat or blood pressure. There have been no reports of incidents. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Are you interested?
I spy with my little eye something beginning with B.
Bike.
Nope. Banana tree.
Oh, of course. We must have missed it.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Drive carbon neutral by filling up and using Shell Go Plus today. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
A move, and a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at that fascinating story coming out of Davos. Goldman Sachs saying that it will not take public any company unless that company has a diverse board. Plus, we're also going to speak to Mark Heppenstall of Penn Mutual Asset Management on his current investment outlook. But first, let's go to John Tucker of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John, what do you have?
Paul, there's a rally going on. It's not in stocks. It's in treasuries, the bond market. The 10-year yield is right now down to 1.70%. Haven't seen that since last year, early December, actually. Right now it's down 3 basis points. The price is up by 8/30 seconds. And we have the 30-year yield at 2.14%. Get a bid to that as well. Now, as for stocks US, Dow Jones Industrial Average right now has turned lower, down 4 points. We're at 29,155. S&P 500, 6 points lower, 33.19. Tech-heavy NASDAQ in the green, just slightly. Right now at 94.02. Investors like the technology stocks still jumping after we got the latest results from Intel. They gave a bullish revenue forecast. Also some data. Research firm IHS Markit out with new data illustrating the travails of America's economy at the start of 2020. Let's find out more from Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The figures highlight a fragmented economy growing at a moderate pace. IHS Markit reports that business activity picked up at American service providers in early January, while manufacturers once again lost ground. Factories have been strapped by weak business investment, lackluster export markets, and the impact of White House trade policy. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, thanks a lot to Vinny. And the earnings season so far with the S&P 500, 86 of the 500 companies there have reported earnings. We've had about 61%, 72% actually, 72% reporting earnings, positive earnings surprises. Once again, the Dow down 16 points. The 10-year yield is at 1.69%. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Well, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon took the helm in Davos. He made a really interesting pledge, and this came, I believe, yesterday, where he said, we are not going to work with companies IPOing who do not have at least one member of the board who is not a white man, who is also straight. It was sort of an interesting pledge coming at a time of increased calls for environmental, social, and governance standards. But does this have teeth? And joining us now is Elisa Martinuzzi. She's a Bloomberg Opinion finance columnist joining us from London. And I would love your perspective on this. I mean, it actually is quite significant given the proportion of companies that have IPO'd that do not have any diversity on their boards.
Yes, I think so. I mean, clearly it's a small start, but you have to start somewhere. And by telegraphing this, it's making it very clear to its clients, where the direction of travel is, and hopefully that'll build some more momentum in this direction, across the IPO market, not just in terms of the deals that it's managing itself.
So, Elisa, any sense of how many companies Goldman Sachs has taken public that don't have diverse boards? I mean, is this a big deal for them, or is it a little bit more kind of window dressing?
Well, I think, if you look at the initial target, which is, the initial target to have one diverse board member by July, that apparently would have only affected about 10% of the companies, fewer than 10% of the companies that Goldman took public in the last 2 years. Now, if you bring that up to two diverse candidates, and that's going to be what they're moving towards in 2021, unfortunately, we don't have the hard and fast numbers, but you can well imagine that particularly in smaller companies, two starts making it, quite a big difference.
How is Goldman's on board?
It's Wall Street, so it's not the most diverse, but they do have a contingency of women, and of course, right across Wall Street, you're seeing potential successors being put in place to the CEOs, which would make probably the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first woman to run a Wall Street firm in history, if that were to happen. And certainly there are potential candidates, at JP Morgan and then Citigroup.
Elisa, what's the rationale for this other than it looks better to have more representation? I mean, is there the financial backing to David Solomon's pledge?
Well, I think, investors are, clearly making the big push here, right? We've had, a couple of IPOs, namely WeWork and Saudi Aramco, where there's been, sufficient pushback from investors with regards to governance, that have made those IPOs, in one case, difficult. I mean, Saudi Aramco did pull it off, but mainly with local investors, and WeWork was pulled. So clearly, that's where the pressure is coming from. It's coming primarily from investors, and that's where they have to meet those demands. Otherwise, it's their own business that gets tarnished, their reputation. It's not just an opportunity to do board business, but if you take those kinds of companies public, increasingly you're going to face reputational damage.
Elisa, what is the expectation for Goldman's competitors? I'm thinking Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and some of the others. Do you think they will follow suit?
Well, clearly the onus is on them now, and potentially, I think the other positive from this policy pledge is that it creates a debate and potentially, ideally, a horse race, right? And it'll lead to better and more aspirational targets.
Elisa Martinuzzi, thank you so much for being with us. Elisa Martinuzzi, Bloomberg Opinion finance columnist, joining us from London. I thought this was really interesting, and it was sort of interesting to look at the statistics as well. Just to sort of give the words to David Solomon, he said it was not going to be a tokenization, but rather there was this sort of idea that these companies tend to be better in getting a variety of different viewpoints, and so that they actually are better served going forward on a financial basis, in addition to
the social issue.
The social issue, yeah.
I think there has been some academic research on that. Diverse workforce, diverse boards lead to better performance, better shareholder returns. I think the key issue for me, again, being a longtime Wall Streeter, is to see kind of what the competitors will do. Will they look as an opportunity to maybe take some market share, or will they follow suit? So it'll be interesting to see what, again, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Credit Suisse, Citi, some of the other big IPO underwriters do and follow suit here with Goldman Sachs.
So among the top 25 IPOs by value each year from 2014 through 2018, 10 companies had no female directors, this according to the co-founder and senior advisor to 2020 Women on Board. So that's sort of the potential for lost business, or perhaps the clout. I mean, if you look at it the other side, the clout that Goldman could have to push this forward within those companies.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if any of the IPO candidates that Goldman is talking to, whether they actually do change the makeup of their boards following this. It'll be interesting to see if there's some test cases coming. Right now, the market's a little bit unchanged here, a little bit lower, I guess. S&P down 5, little change. This is Bloomberg.
Right now, let's head to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, a second case of Chinese coronavirus is now confirmed in the U.S. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says this patient is a woman in her 60s from Chicago who had traveled to Wuhan, China last month. That is the city at the center of the outbreak that's left at least 26 dead and led to more than 800 confirmed cases in China alone. The chief medical officer of Illinois says this patient returned to the United States last week. The CDC says 63 U.S. patients in 22 states are under investigation for coronavirus. So far, though, only 2 are confirmed. 11 others have come back negative. 2 people are dead after a massive explosion overnight at an industrial company in Houston. Police Chief Art Acevedo.
Houston Police Department has initiated a criminal investigation.
Though he says he does not think at this point the blast was intentional. He's asking people who live near the explosion to search their homes and neighborhoods for any debris and to contact them if they find anything that could aid the investigation. It's the third and final day of arguments for House managers in President Trump's Senate impeachment trial. Today, the Democrats will focus on obstruction of Congress. One of the House managers, Val Demings, gave a preview to CNN.
When we say abuse of Congress, we're not only talking about the House, but of course that includes the Senate. And we know that this president, President Donald Trump, has used and abused the authority in his office to obstruct Congress on every turn.
Before today's arguments begin, President Trump will attend the annual anti-abortion rights March for Life in Washington, a first for a sitting president. Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 23 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £23 million.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The Sky Broadband sale ends soon. Get a massive 30% off superfast broadband and anytime calls. It's now just £25 a month for 18 months, so you can stream, share, play or tweet in the living room, bedroom Hey, any room you like. It's usually £37 a month, but now it's just £25 a month for 18 months plus $19.95 setup. So what are you waiting for? Offer ends 6th of Feb. Visit sky.com today. Sky Fibre network areas. Speeds vary by location. Prices may change during contract terms apply.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
On the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, this is John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with us, Bloomberg Business Flash. You have the competing forces looking for investors' attention this morning. On the one hand, you have technology stocks, the best performer in the broader index after Intel gave a bullish revenue forecast. And then again, you have concerns about the coronavirus. A second patient in the U.S. has been confirmed to be infected with the coronavirus from China, but so far has killed at least 25 people. And it looks like the risk-off sentiment is winning the day so far right now. You have a rally taking place in Treasuries. The 10-year, the yield down to 1.69%. That's a 3 basis point drop as you have the bid to Treasuries right now. As far as stocks, Dow Jones Industrial Average 16 points lower. We're at 29,145. S&P 500 down 7 points. That's down 0.2% at 3318. And the Nasdaq Composite Index is right now it's down less than a point. We're at 94.01. A spike in volatility as measured by the VIX right now, that is up over 5%. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, the everything rally that investors enjoyed in 2019 appears to be continuing here in the early parts of 2020. To get a sense of what the risk-reward scenario is for investors right now, we welcome Mark Heppenstall, Chief Investment Officer of Penn Mutual Asset Management. They have about $28.5 billion under management based in Philadelphia. But Mark joins us here on our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. So, Mark, again, a fantastic performance in financial markets last year, a good start to the year. What are the risks to the market from your perspective?
Well, I do think that the geopolitical risks, certainly with what's going on with Iran, the tensions there, clearly the coronavirus is front and center, and it seems as though the second case arriving here in the United States is enough to pressure equity markets some today and lower interest rates. So, but generally our outlook is for a more stable market, both equities and interest rates this year, and I think that's really resulting from the Fed honestly wanting to get out of the spotlight, move to the side, keep interest rates where they are, and we think that's going to be really an outcome where both equities and interest rates are more range-bound this year as opposed to dramatic moves like we've seen the previous 2 years.
There's been a common theme where people say that bonds and stocks are sending different messages, with bonds rallying typically indicating some negativity, pessimism about global growth, stocks rallying indicating optimism. You said you disagree. You don't think that these narratives are inconsistent. Why?
Well, I would say on the short term, like you get a day like today where fear enters the market, you're going to see a situation where bonds and stocks act differently. However, over the long term, I do think that the fact interest rates are so low, they are so unattractive versus other alternatives, and equities, I think, are a big part of that equation. It really forces investors to take more risk when interest rates really sit where they do today. So I think over the long term, that's supportive of valuations, and I do think that, and clearly that, the mantra "Don't fight the Fed" worked in late 2018 and then worked in 2019. So I think that's also part of the equation. And last year, the Fed at the beginning of the year was expected to really move interest rates higher. So the fact that everything rallied last year in response to lower Fed interest rates, I think makes sense.
Mark, it's an election year this year. How do you typically think about your portfolio and positioning in a presidential election year?
Well, I will say the pull from the middle, from I would say both parties really, I think means the outcome for the election is going to have significance for markets. And it doesn't necessarily mean that stocks are going to scream higher or scream lower depending on which party wins. But I do think in terms of winners and losers will be quite different depending on the outcome of this year's presidential election. So, and we've been involved heavily in the fixed income markets. That's where we tend to focus our investment activity. And so, certainly healthcare is an area that has been under some pressure there for fear that, there could be dramatic changes for the health insurance in the United States. So that, is again something that the outcome, I think, will deliver different winners and losers next year.
High-yield bonds, they've been on a tear, at least through the last couple of days when we saw the price of oil really tank. Wow. Crude trading on the NYMEX now, $54.48 on a barrel. That's down from the end of the year when it was $63. It's almost down $10 since the end of last year. Amazing. And you are seeing high-yield debt underperform other types of credit as a result of this due to their energy component. What's your view on this space?
Well, I do think when the double B universe is trading sub 4%, where it sits or close to it today, it's hard to make a case that I would say high quality, high yield makes a lot of sense. So, I do think there are better opportunities for total return within the investment grade corporate bond market and also within certain parts of the securitized securities market. So, I will say I think generally consumer balance sheets are in better condition than corporate balance sheets. So I think if you're going to take credit risk, you're much more paid well to do it and rewarded in consumer credit as opposed to corporate credit.
So are you underweighting high yield right now?
We are, yeah. We're looking for opportunities to lighten our high yield exposure and upgrade to investment grade and to securitized in particular for our strategic income fund, which is really a go anywhere fixed income strategy.
When did you start doing that?
Well, probably towards the second half of last year, and we generally, at the high end, we may have 10 to 15% of high yield exposure within our strategic income fund, but we've been gradually reducing that. And again, we're finding similar types of spreads for highly rated securitized products. The residential mortgage-backed securities market in particular, last year they underperformed partly as a result of higher prepayment fears as mortgage rates declined. So that's an opportunity where if our outlook is for more stable rates this year, that should outperform corporate credit, for example.
How about credit quality in your portfolio? We're 10, 11 years into this economic cycle. People are concerned perhaps about credit quality. What are you seeing in your portfolio?
Well, we do think that, good, solid credit research, especially on the corporate credit side, is critical today, given where valuation sits. So, our corporate credit team, they really focus across the credit spectrum, both investment grade and high yield, and they've done a terrific job in terms of navigating these markets. And I will say last year, even though generally it wasn't everything rally, there were pockets of weakness, especially among lower rated high yield credit. So energy, some certain CCC rated securities last year really underperformed. So that's been an area where we have been underweight.
What kind of returns can people expect from a credit portfolio right now that takes a bit of risk, doesn't go crazy, but is trying to operate and getting a little carry in this environment?
Well, the starting point really for all financial asset pricing is the risk-free rate. So when you have the 10-year yield trading now below 1.7%, to me, it's hard to make a case that you're going to get much more than, mid-2s to 3% for a reasonably high-quality investment-grade corporate bond portfolio today. So, again, we think it's time to be cautious, and we do want to make sure that, if we do get in a circumstance similar to the December of 2018, when really the credit markets were on sale, equities were under pressure, we want to have dry powder to take advantage of those opportunities.
How about new issues? Lisa and I, we keep seeing Bloomberg News stories about all the new issuance coming in the investment grade market.
Well, there's been
there's
been incredible demand, and I will say there are certain securities, especially within the banking space. Some perpetual preferred securities are getting done in that low 4% zip code. So, that was levels of issuance that were unthinkable 12 months ago. But, again, I do think the negative interest rates abroad really are steering foreign investors to U.S. financial assets, low treasury yield, steering investors to yield where they can get it anywhere. So even though we generally think bank credit quality is good, some of the opportunities there are definitely less attractive today.
That's actually what's distracting me right now is the gap between 2-year bonds in the U.S. and Germany.
Boy,
it's just absolutely blown my mind. It's the lowest since September 2017. I'm actually completely serious. But it's exactly your point, Mark, which is that basically this is confirmation, in my view. I mean, take it as you will. To me, this means that investors are coming over from Europe and coming into the U.S. and trying to take advantage of that gap. I could be wrong. My email address, if you want to write to me to tell me I'm wrong, Labramowitz at Bloomberg.net. Mark Happenstall, Chief Investment Officer of Penn Mutual Asset Management. This is Bloomberg.
That saying, success.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment.
we put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at that fascinating story about Jeff Bezos' phone being hacked and what it means with the Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia. Fascinating story. We'll have the latest for you. Plus, we'll also take a look at the municipal bond market. It's not just investment grade and high yield that's moving. It's also the munis. We'll have that for you. But first, John Tucker of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
Yeah, Paul, a bit of a push me, pull you kind of market day. Right now, the stocks, the major averages at least, are pretty much flat at this hour. And we're seeing a rally in risk-off sentiment, specifically related to bonds, a rally there. Most U.S. stocks are declining. Investors kind of setting aside the upbeat corporate reports. There is news that there's a second U.S. patient that has been confirmed to be infected with the coronavirus that originated in China. The S&P 500, it is right now in the red, reversing earlier gains, sinking amid concerns the illness could develop into something of a global crisis and dent growth. Technology stocks, the best performers. This comes after Intel delivered a bullish revenue forecast. And also some data. Federal Reserve policymakers will keep interest rates on hold this year and next, and are going to wind up their efforts to boost excess bank reserves by June. At least this is according to a survey conducted by Bloomberg of economists. This is a poll that took place in late January 21st to 23rd. The mean forecast from 28 respondents predicted no move in the federal funds rate until at least 2022. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, well, it's in the green, has turned higher, up 13 points, 29,173. The S&P 500 is lower by 5 points at 3320, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ is 6 points higher. We're at 9409. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, John Tucker. This is truly my favorite segment of the day because it just yet again confirms the ongoing trend. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our interactive broker studios. Come on, say it. What's going on with those small caps versus the large caps?
They're doing worse. In fact, it's getting so bad, Lisa. I got to tell you, you're on to something. The Russell 2000's ratio to the S&P 500 is headed for a 12-year low.
See?
What is going on?
Russell taking another hit today. It's down more than 0.6%. The S&P 500 is only lower by about 0.2%. Now, the Russell's steepest drop belongs to Harsco, whose ticker is HSC. The industrial company has fallen more than 17% after preliminary fourth quarter earnings and revenue were disappointing. Epizyme, ticker EPZM, has lost about 14%. Now, the drug maker was cut to the equivalent of hold from buy at SVB Leerink after winning U.S. approval late yesterday for its first product, a cancer treatment. And opioid makers are lower after Incense Therapeutics founder John Kapoor was sentenced to 5.5 years in prison late yesterday in a conspiracy case. Endo International, ticker ENDP, is down 8.5%, and Mallinckrodt, ticker MNK, is also down 8.5%. Now, the Russell's biggest gain belongs to eHealth, ticker EHTH, the online seller of health insurance. is up almost 33%. Fiscal third quarter results showed a narrower loss and higher revenue than analysts expected. And Cincinnati Bell, ticker CBB, has added 20%. The phone company said it received a $605 million takeover offer from an unnamed infrastructure fund. Brookfield Infrastructure said in December that it planned a $530 million offer. They may well be that unnamed fund.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thank you.
That was the implication.
So that was the implication. I want to get to a fascinating story here. President Donald Trump is again facing questions about his relationship with Mohammed bin Salman after the Saudi crown prince was accused of spying on Amazon.com chief Jeff Bezos. To get some more on this story, we welcome Justin Sink. Justin covers the White House for Bloomberg News. Justin, thanks so much for joining us. Talk to us about how this story is expanding from what was originally reported, Jeff Bezos and the Saudi crown prince.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing now is, I think, a lot of pressure on the U.S. government to respond. Obviously, President Trump is still sort of facing the fallout from the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, who was the Washington Post columnist who was murdered inside a diplomatic facility. And this, again, has gone back. In some ways, this latest controversy is like an amalgamation of all the sort of controversies of President Trump's tenure. So you've got these concerns over, closeness with Saudi Arabia despite human rights violations. You've got his back and forth with Jeff Bezos and Amazon, who President Trump himself has been frustrated with because of the ownership of the Washington Post. You've got this ongoing court case over whether the Pentagon violated kind of a fair competition by giving Microsoft rather than Amazon this huge $10 billion contract. And so I think a lot of attention is now turning to how President Trump's going to handle this, because you would think under normal circumstances a foreign government hacking the richest man in the United States, the head of a prominent American company, would be something that the U.S. government would respond to.
Justin, there's also a question of cybersecurity. So putting aside the politics of whether President Trump responds to this, there is a question of Saudi Arabia's capabilities in any potential friendship or contact from people close to the administration. We know that, for example, President Trump's son-in-law had some direct contact with Mohammed bin Salman. So I'm wondering, do we have any sense or better surveillance into knowing that other members, perhaps, of the government were not hacked by the Saudi Arabians in the same kind of way that they are suspected of doing so with the richest man in America?
Yeah, I mean, this is a real question here on the White House. There is all this reporting about Jared Kushner and MBS speaking with each other over WhatsApp. Obviously, the Saudis have been sort of brazen, at least allegedly, but the one kind of point of caution that some people have said during this is that the investigation into Jeff Bezos' phone was done by an independent firm. It hasn't yet been reviewed by outside government sources. We're not sure if the U.S. intelligence community has made the same determination, and that could explain some of the reticence so far by the White House and the administration to publicly say anything about this. But my guess is that they are undertaking a security review, not just of what happened in the Bezos case, but if anything had happened that could potentially compromise U.S. security here. The White House has said previously that Jared's phone conversations were all properly documented and security measures were taken, but I'm sure that this case has sort of prompted a new look at all that.
Well, it's interesting. I think is there any sense that the U.S. government plans to launch an investigation, or are they just going to sit on the sidelines and hope this maybe blows over?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the public indication is the second. White House spokesman Hogan Gidley was asked about this yesterday. He said, while the administration takes it seriously, that the Saudis are an important ally. The president himself said he wasn't really familiar with the case, and Treasury Secretary Mnuchin said it shouldn't stop American companies from continuing to work with and invest in Saudi Arabia. So there's not yet kind of an indication that the U.S. is launching kind of a full-scale investigation or raising red flags in the way that the Obama administration, for instance, did after the sort of famous Sony hack by North Korea, which ended up, releasing a lot of embarrassing internal documents and emails.
Justin Sink of Bloomberg News, thank you so much for bringing us that. I do want to just give you an update on what's going on in markets. Right now, you're seeing oil prices fall. It's actually down now. Crude on the NYMEX, $54.28. That's down almost $10 from the end of last year. Meanwhile, you're seeing 10-year and 2-year Treasury yields fall to their lowest since October, and there is a question of why. You've seen it, seen equities rebound, certainly led by tech. You aren't seeing necessarily a massive bid in gold, and there is a question of why yields are constantly being pressed lower in the U.S. I do just have to say, I do find this interesting. The foreign bid, how much is that what's driving it, given the fact that the ECB is on hold, possibly looking at more ways to stimulate inflation? Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager with World and National Headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, as China races to contain the spread of coronavirus, the U.S. has confirmed one more case of the deadly illness here. The Centers for Disease Control says the new patient is a woman in her 60s from Chicago who had traveled to Wuhan, the city at the center of the outbreak last month. She joins a man in his 30s from the Seattle area who had also been to Wuhan. The virus has killed at least 26 people in China and forced travel restrictions on about 40 million. Federal and local officials in the U.S. are monitoring more than 60 people as they try to keep the disease from spreading here. An overnight explosion at a warehouse in Houston has left 2 people dead and left damage at a number of nearby homes and buildings. Police Chief Art Acevedo.
We also know that one person is unaccounted for, but the family's here, and we're keeping that person in our prayers.
Chief says a criminal investigation's underway, but at this point they don't think this blast happened on purpose. A third day of arguments in President Trump's impeachment trial gets underway in less than 2 hours. House managers plan to focus on obstruction of Congress after they laid the case for abuse of power by the president yesterday. Republican Senator John Barrasso says the presentation from the Democrats has felt at times like Groundhog Day.
Some of the videos that they've been playing for this, the third day, they have played, I think Fiona Hill, I think must have seen one of those videos 5 or 6 or 7 times.
President Trump's lawyers still plan to open their defense tomorrow, even though the president calls Saturday. Warren is brushing off concerns from a so-called angry dad who confronted her in a viral video saying her student loan forgiveness plan would leave people like him, quote, screwed. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Full breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever you have in the morning, have it at daybreak.
Event risk is taking center stage for traders.
Nathan Hager.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve.
And Karen Moscow.
It is the 5th major industry player to make some sort of zero commission offer.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance?
Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can
take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada, or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use, and the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Harry Bikers here. This message goes out to something very special.
Yes, we're talking to you, chicken.
Maybe we've been seeing too much of each other.
But times have changed, Dave.
We've been cheating on meat.
Thing is, no stocks make veggie dishes so irresistible that cheating on meat is proper tasty.
Our dear chicken, you were the fire in my life, but it's all about you now, aubergine katsu curry. Prepare to be wined and dined, my love.
Cheat on meat with no veggie stocks.
I am a force for good.
I am a force for courage.
And for calm.
I am a force for safety.
For fairness. For leadership.
I am a force for the future.
For compassion.
For my community.
I am a police officer.
And I am a force for all.
Be one of the 20,000 new police officers and be a force for all that you believe in. Search Join the Police.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 23 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £23 million.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores, subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm John Tucker in the Bloomberg Newsroom with his Bloomberg Business Flash. We have the major averages. They are mixed right now. It's been a back and forth kind of session. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 21 points right now, 21,181 points. Broader market is lower. S&P 500 down about 5 points at 3320. The Nasdaq Composite Index, tech-heavy Nasdaq, at 9 points higher. That's up 0.1% at 94.11. Now, as we look to Treasuries, right now, the rally continues for bonds. 10-year yield, though, is back up just a bit, 170. That's down about 3 basis points. The price is up by 8.30 seconds. So we have NYMEX crude. That is still lower. Right now, down about 2.6%, down $1.48 at 54.11. And also, as you look at the gold, the bid to gold right now, that's up 0.4, up $6.10 an ounce at 1577.70. That's COMEX gold. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Now on Bloomberg Markets, Munis in Focus.
Bloomberg Markets brought to you by Build America Mutual. Will you get paid if an earthquake puts your municipal bond investment on shaky ground? Yes, AA guaranteed. BAM Municipal Bond Insurance protects against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Well, there has been so much interest in municipal bonds, and there is a question right now. Is there enough municipal debt being sold? And this sounds kind of crazy because you think about all these people who are trying to be financially disciplined when it comes to their state finances and their local finances, but there isn't enough debt being sold. Shruti Singh joining us now of Bloomberg News. Shruti, you wrote a really interesting story about how there seems to be a deficit, a dearth of debt being sold. We need more debt being sold in order to create a more balanced supply and demand. Please explain.
Yeah, so one of the things I hear when I talk to analysts and investors in the muni bond market is that there is just a lot of money piling into the muni market, and there's just only so much supply. There's a few different reasons for why there's so much money coming in, one of them being the tax reform from 2017 that capped state and local deductions, and then that really left investors in high tax states looking for ways to lower what they owe. And that has really led to this influx of cash into the muni bond mutual funds, and that's just caused a huge amount of demand. And there's just only so much supply out there.
Well, talking about supply, our good friends in Chicago just came to market. How did that deal go?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because there's some beneficiaries in the market based on just the overall demand for high yield debt. And so in Chicago, we have a situation where the city got refinancing through the bond market, and they were able to get much tighter spreads than just a year ago.
So let's talk the numbers. So over the next month, as you put in your story, about $25 billion municipal debt. It's hard to say. Can you municipal debt will be paid off, and also bondholders will be receiving another $13 billion of interest payments in February. So that's a total of $38 billion. On top of all of the inflows that you were talking about, this rush into muni debt in order to have the tax benefit, et cetera, how much of a boost does this give to this debt? I mean, how much is this pressuring yields lower?
So, to put that in perspective, we only have maybe 12 or 13 billion of bonds that are set to come to market over the next 30 days. So those numbers that you mentioned, that actually feed that supply, we have somewhere between 12 and 13 billion in bonds. So there is that gap that we're looking at, and people talk about the mismatch. And so what's been happening is that places like the city of Chicago, others such as Illinois, where I'm based in, they're getting much tighter spreads. And, these are generally issuers that provide higher yield in a market where rates are pretty low and are going to provide some incentive for investors to take some risk. But now what's happening is that the yields that the penalties, as they're referred to, that these issuers are asked for are getting much lower.
So, Shruti, you mentioned, being in Chicago. Let's talk about the state of Illinois. Typically a tough credit there. What's going on with kind of the municipal bonds of the state of Illinois?
So in Illinois, in terms of credit ratings, it's the worst rated state in the nation. Part of the reason is because it has a very large unfunded pension liability, which has always been a drag on the rating. Right now, we're just about on the cusp of some speeches from the governor, Governor Pritzker, who's been in office for about a year, and he's set to give his State of the State speech next week, and then the budget address in about a month or so. And so people are really taking a look at what is he going to do to set the tone in terms of really giving the state a boost. A lot of investors are giving him credit for what he's done in the first year. One of them is to get an initiative on the ballot this coming November to see if voters will approve a progressive income tax here in Illinois to really help boost revenue.
So I'm going to rip up the script, to use Tom Keene's words. I was in Chicago for school. Is it like, that the L doesn't work anymore and, there's trash overflowing on every street corner? What's the practical implication of Chicago being the worst rated state in the union?
With Illinois being the worst rated.
Fair enough. Okay, Chicago's not a state. Carry on. Illinois being the worst rated.
And both of them have challenges, but one of the things, as I mentioned, is that investors are giving both of them credit for making some improvements. But along with that, what investors tell me is that these both of these issues are benefiting from the overall market environment. But, I mean, yes, there are challenges. One of the biggest things is, can both of these issuers, Illinois and Chicago, really pay down the debt that they owe their pension systems, which is like the big thing. It's not the only thing, but it's the big thing that a lot of people mention to me. This is money that's owed to retirees that they were promised. And to just put some numbers into perspective, Illinois has a unfunded pension liability of about $137 billion, B as in boy, and Chicago has somewhere close to maybe $30 billion. So those are a lot of dollars that need to flow from the city and the state into these funds, and that maybe takes away from some other services that the state may be offering. It could be anything.
Shruti Singh, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate the update on the municipal bond market. Shruti is a municipal bond reporter for Bloomberg News based in Chicago. Lisa, I just want to mention a headline that's crossing the Bloomberg terminal. It says a senator says the CDC about to confirm third U.S. case of coronavirus.
This is part of the reason why people are saying that there's a risk-off feel that you can see, not in equities, but you can see it, or maybe in the Russell. Maybe that's the reason why the small cap index is
the Russell index is off about 0.8%. So we'll keep up to date on this developing story of the coronavirus. It seems to be an ongoing issue, not just in China, but now also in the United States and other parts of the world. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Chinese authorities are ramping up measures to contain the spreading coronavirus. The S&P moving slightly lower after news that a second patient in the U.S. has been confirmed to be infected. The move to zero commission trading has hurt earnings at E-Trade. E-Trade's revenue dropped after the firm cut fees, matching rival Schwab's announcement that it was eliminating trading commissions for stocks, ETFs, and options. The race to zero has shaken up the discount brokerage industry. Walmart is closing the corporate headquarters of its home items business, Hayneedle, and integrating the business within Walmart.com. Told us about 200 associates are affected. And Americans are forecast to eat a record 1.4 billion wings during Super Bowl weekend, up 2% from 2019, according to the National Chicken Council. Consumers will have to pay a bit more for the iconic game time snack. Wholesale prices are about 5% more expensive than last year. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card. Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge. Wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth. As he reaches...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hello. I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive now. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as a deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA On Demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, the Everything Rally continues. Is this a sign to go big or go home? We're going to be speaking with the chief strategist at Janney Montgomery Scott. Plus, a conversation you don't want to miss with Intel CEO Bob Swan sitting down in Davos with Bloomberg's Jonathan Ferro. That is all coming up right now. We are heading over to John Tucker to take a look at that market action. John.
Yeah, everything rally is kind of limited right now to risk off. So it's an everything rally for bonds, at least. A 10-year yield is down to 169. That's down 3 basis points. The price action up 10 to 30 seconds right now. Now, you guys had mentioned the headline that crossed the Bloomberg. A senator was saying the CDC about to confirm the third U.S. case of coronavirus. As soon as that crossed, we saw risk assets going into the red. Right now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average 49 points lower. That's down 0.2%. We're at 29,109. S&P 500, that is 12 points lower right now. That's down 0.4 at 3312. NASDAQ Composite Index 17 points lower. That is down to 0.2% right now at 93. 185. Well, we had the S&P 500 reversing earlier gains. It was higher earlier. The tech stocks were the best performers. This came after Intel gave a bullish revenue forecast. We're seeing gold right now. That is higher. Again, risk-off sentiment up 740 an ounce, 1579 right now. That is for COMEX gold. And the Japanese yen up 0.1%, 109.37 right now. That is against the greenback. We check the markets for you every 15 minutes during the trading day right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
2019 in the rearview mirror, and what a year it was. We're starting off 2020 in generally a similar type of fashion, broad strength of financial markets across the board. Let's see kind of what the big drivers are for 2020 going forward. We welcome Mark Lucchini, Chief Investment Strategist at Janney Montgomery Scott, based in Philadelphia. They have $90 billion under management, so lots of money putting to work there. Mark, thanks so much for joining us on the phone. Again, we started out the year kind of like we ended it, some pretty good strength across the financial markets. How are you framing out the 2020 outlook?
Sure. Well, I don't expect a repeat in 2020 of what we had in 2019, at least by way of order of magnitude, but directionally similar. And that is to say, I think that U.S. economy is going to remain on sound footing. There are now, I think, increasingly evidence of better economic growth abroad. We had a slew of manufacturing numbers that came out from the European area this morning, and they were all indicative of month-over-month sequential improvement. And I think that is going to largely play out in a fashion that allows investors and business leaders alike to see those better conditions framing an outlook for corporate earnings in 2020 to improve, and that should set the setting for risk assets to continue to march higher. Although recognizing that 90% plus of the move last year in the U.S. stock market was a result of multiple expansion rather than earnings growth. So it's really going to, I think, be heavily reliant on that earnings picture to improve, because without it, I don't expect we're going to see that kind of multiple expansion repeated this year.
I'm old enough to remember when people said we were late cycle. Are we still late cycle?
Well, we're later in the cycle than we were 10 years ago.
Are we? Some people are actually saying that we've had other cycles. They're microcycles that have cycled within cycles, and therefore we're totally fine. And now we're starting a new cycle.
Well, I mean, there is actually some oscillation that you can see in, for instance, the manufacturing cycle, where they tend to ebb and flow in 3-year periods, where you have about 18 months of manufacturing activity advancing and then 18 months of slowing manufacturing activity. And so actually what we think we're seeing right now is that nadir being formed in that 18 months of a slowdown in manufacturing that should lead to improving numbers, and therefore I think work up towards catching up to the data we've been getting out of the services side of the economy, which is much larger, much less volatile than the manufacturing side, but together that should lead to, once again, an improved outlook for economic activity over the balance of this year.
Well, Mark, I'm old enough to remember when valuations matter. And I think about the equity performance up nearly 30% last year. I don't recall a lot of earnings growth accompanying that. So how should we be thinking about valuation in the equity markets right now?
Well, there's a number of ways one can look at it. If you just simply look at the price to earnings multiple, we started this week with the S&P 500 trading at precisely 19.0 times forward earnings for FactSet S&P 500 estimates of a little over $175 for S&P 500 companies.
We use Bloomberg consensus.
Well, it's probably not a number that's all that dissimilar, and as a consequence, it suggests that equity markets certainly aren't cheap in here. But we've seen multiple expansion even up into the mid-20s in the midst of a bull market, and then when you take it into the context of also kind of once again the extension of the TINA principle, there is no alternative when you look at bond yields again pressing lower than 1.7 on the tape, assuming that I think what's concerning investors at the moment is the coronavirus tends to wane over some period of time without it obviously infesting conditions to the point where equity markets need to sell off more to reconcile to concerns that this will impact on a more permanent basis global growth, then I think that the market can sustain this multiple, if not even again expand somewhat.
Mark, what's your most contrarian call for 2020?
Well, I think obviously one would be the emergence of inflation. It's been hibernating now for the better part of a decade, and it's probably the one thing that has the least consensus around the expectation that we'll ever see it again. You can look at that by way of the TIPS yields, 1.6, 1.7 on the 10-year. You can look at it by way of Fed policy, with their earmarking risk to the downside rather than the upside, and there are obviously lengthy pause in any kind of rate adjustments. And so I think that would be the one thing that, given the tightness in the labor markets and any improvement economically, that we could see potentially emerge, certainly not in the near future, but maybe out over the balance of 2020 into 2021.
So, Mark, as I think about it, Lisa and I were talking about we're late in what is typically, a late in the cycle. If you think about 10 or 11 years of this economic cycle, are there sectors that you like here more than others, maybe given where we are in the economic cycle, maybe where we are in terms of valuation?
Well, I think if you look at the sectors that had recently shown some signs of life again, they're indicative of this improvement that we're recognizing here that I think is still less than convincing among market participants, but I think evolving in a way that says that one would want to have a more pro-growth, more pro-cyclical stance. So sectors like industrials, for instance, look appealing to us. Energy would also fall into that camp, but it's got its own idiosyncratic issues. Material stocks would fall into that camp as well. It would financials. Those that are winning on a day like today, when you have this, rather violent rotation from risk on to risk off, the utilities, consumer staples, real estate investment trusts make sense as a risk haven if you're going to be long equities at the moment. But at the same time, their valuations have expanded to the point where they look exceedingly rich to us. And unless this environment is going to stay, once again, where investors are on their heels from an investment standpoint, they look the least appealing among all the sectors in the S&P 500.
Mark Lashini, Chief Investment Strategist, Janney Montgomery Scott, joining us. Thank you so much for being with us. Janney Montgomery Scott with $90 billion of assets under management from Philadelphia. Just that violent risk-off feel is leaving the NASDAQ down less than 0.2%, and the S&P is down less than 0.4%. It's down. It had been up, so that's fair. And you are seeing, though, a little bit more significant rally in bonds. You're seeing 2-year yields at their lowest since early October of last year, 1.497%. So we're getting back, and I do go back to that chart that I just love. I'm sorry, the gap between German and U.S. 2-year yields getting to the narrowest since 2017. The risk-off feel being fueled by this report. U.S. Senator John Barrasso telling reporters that the CDC told lawmakers they're about to confirm a third case of the Wuhan virus in the United States, leading to some concerns that this will continue to spread. And at the very least, it isn't as fatal as SARS, but at the very least, will dampen appetite for travel as well as being in large public spaces with lots of other people who could have the virus.
Exactly. Coming up on Bloomberg Radio and Television, we're going to have Intel CEO Bob Swan's going to sit down with Guy Johnson and Vonnie Quinn from Bloomberg Television. Intel up 9% today. It's $68.77, the highest since 2000. Good quarter earnings. Let's get a sense of kind of what we might hear and what's going on at Intel. We welcome Anand Srinivasan, Senior Tech Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. So, Anand, good numbers at Intel last night, right?
Fantastic. Look, Intel is not getting enough credit for what it has been doing. We've been saying this for several quarters now, that the cloud is going to come back, and it's going to come back strong. The PC market is healthy, and we think that numbers are still way too low. We plotted our conservative model shows us still 25 cents above the best of the street. So we think Intel is wrong. It's just that they're wrong on the wrong side. We think it could be much better than people think.
And who else could potentially benefit if they're right in terms of cloud adoption or other aspects that are fueling this?
Look, I think this is a rising tide that's going to lift all boats. We saw this in 2018, and memory is going to be a strong performer, which means Micron is going to benefit, and Samsung and SK Hynix are going to benefit. We think that AMD has a place at the table for sure. So multiple semiconductor makers can benefit.
So, all right. So when we think about the cloud, big growth story, we haven't really. Should we think about the chip makers as a way to play it?
Absolutely. Look, we've said this before, which is that the chip makers are the new industrials. They're the building blocks of today's economy and tomorrow's economy. So as we get more technologically advanced and cloud adoption widens, they are now more than 50% of spending for Intel's data center segment. So absolutely, I think the chip makers are the building block way to play the tech economy.
Anand Srinivasan, you're going to be coming back, and we're going to be talking to you after the interview. It is so fascinating. Anand, you said something that still sticks out in my head about the chip makers. You want to get in when they get boring, because for a long time they were used as sort of the bellwether of trade tensions, and they would rally or they'd absolutely get crushed depending on what the U.S. and China potentially were talking about. Now they're shifting into actually demonstrating that they are the growing element of the new economy, and it'll be interesting to see how much that's been priced in from the trade hopes that have come out, or whether we're going to see some more volatility there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at Intel stock right here, $69.86. Stock is up by 8.8% today. Highest level since 2000. You think about that, 20 years to get back the performance from what that they lost from 2000 when that dot-com bubble burst. So just extraordinary. Coming up, Bob Swan is sitting down with Guy Johnson, Vonnie Quinn, Bloomberg, talking about the quarter. And so a very good quarter for Intel. Let's go right now to Guy Johnson and Vonnie Quinn of Bloomberg Television.
Welcome to our Bloomberg Television and radio audiences. I'm Vonnie Quinn in New York with Guy Johnson in London. Intel is up more than 8% after reporting a strong fourth quarter earnings after the bell yesterday, beating estimates and improving its forecast. For more on the results and the chipmakers' plans, we want to welcome Bob Swan now, the CEO of Intel, who joins us from Santa Clara, California. Bob, congratulations on an excellent quarter. Everything improved, and indeed you knocked it out of the park for investors. They're very happy with you today. But give us the argument that this is more than one quarter's worth.
Good morning, Vonnie, and thanks for having me. Look, I'd more put it in the context of the full year of 2019. It was our 51st year, and it was our fourth record year in a row as a company. So what we've seen in terms of trends is, first, this insatiable appetite for data, and with that, the needs for more and more compute, more and more storage, and the movement of data being faster and faster. Those trends have continued, and we expect them to continue for a long time. Those dynamics and the fact that there's more and more vehicles of compute, not just the PC, not just the server, but at the edge, automobiles and homes and retail shops and factories and hospitals. We see a world where there's more and more demand for compute, and we believe we're well positioned to take advantage of that. And the fourth quarter results were, I think, emblematic of the role we play in driving this compute across multiple different devices. And our outlook for 2020 is for yet another record year. So the macro trends are very favorable. The investments we've been making, we think, were the right investments, and we're seeing the benefit of those in the fourth quarter and as we go into 2020.
Now, you're improving your process node technology. You're going to do that by another 25% this year. But explain to us how you continue to increase margins at a time when margins will almost definitely take a hit from the increased cadence.
Yeah, I think first, the demand for our products, what we've been seeing is a continued desire for the highest performance compute in the products we offer. And what that means is they have a tendency to have highest performances, the highest ASPs. So in the fourth quarter, we saw our Xeon scalable product, a product we called Cascade Lake, had real high demand, and that is the premium product, if you will, for our data center business. With the premium product is higher ASPs, higher margins, and we expect the demand for that product to continue as we come into the new year.
Bob, good morning. Guy in London. You are, though, nearly 3 years behind TSMC when it comes to 7 nanometer. Can Can you increase the rate of change within Intel in order to close that gap?
Yeah, good morning, Guy, or good afternoon. Yeah, we believe we can. We're launching 10 nanometer now. We did it in the fourth quarter with our client products and our FPGAs, and then we'll continue to launch 10 nanometer products in 2020. At the same time, we've been investing extensively in both 7 nanometer and increasingly 5 nanometer. And our expectations are we will get back to a 2 to 2.5 year cadence of process node advancement. And within each node, we expect to add incremental compute as we've done in the past. So ramping 10, investing in 7 for a quick 2-year follow-on, and continuing to invest in 5 nanometer. And from that gives our design teams the ability with both architecture, packaging, to capitalize on that process technology to deliver what ultimately matters for our customers, which is not what node you're on, but what incremental product performance are you able to deliver.
Okay, I appreciate what you say about that, and I think it's a point well taken in terms of how the market is responding as well. But nevertheless, to come back to Vonnie's point, as you pick up that rate of change, as the delta accelerates a little bit within the business, doesn't that have a margin effect?
Well, I think the outlook that we gave for 2020 relative to last year is our operating margins on slight top-line growth will be somewhat flat. And that's a function of gross margin will come down slightly, but our spending won't grow quite as fast as our revenue grows. So they will offset each other, and our operating margins for the year will be flat with last year.
Well, you actually had targeted 60%, Bob. Let me come in on that point, because you did target 60%, and while you improved margins last year by more than 2 points to 58.8%, are you now saying that 60% is far off in the distance? When do you actually anticipating hitting 60, if at all, anymore?
Yeah, I think what we said yesterday is our operating margins in 2020 would be flat with 2019.
Right, but my point is last year...
What it meant was 1 point... implied in that is a 1 point decline in gross margin, offset by a 1 point decline in spending as a percentage of revenue. So we're looking at our operating margins to be relatively flat, despite the fact, to Guy, your point, that we're ramping a new 10 nanometer product. In the early stages of a new product, new node ramp, the tendencies are that will weigh on your gross margins a bit. That is true for us in 2020 as we ramp 10 nanometer, which is very consistent with ramping of new products.
Bob, last April you specifically said you were targeting 60% plus gross margins. When do you anticipate you'll see that now at Intel?
In May, we kind of laid out our multi-year view of our expectations for gross margin over the next 3 to 4 year time frame. And what we indicated was we had expected, as you migrate to 10 nanometer and 7 nanometer over the course of the next 2 years, that would weigh on our gross margins for the business. Since that time, our second half of last year was actually stronger than we expected, and our outlook for 2020 is in line. So that's what we're focused on, delivering 59% gross margins this year as we ramp 10 nanometer and invest in 7 nanometer.
Bob, one final kind of quick, broad question. Do you have any concerns about what is happening in China right now? You've got the coronavirus, that could hit demand. You've also got a trade deal that's just been done that might incentivize the Chinese to rely more on their technology rather than American technology.
Yeah. Well, first, on the virus, I would just say that our primary focus is on the safety and well-being of our employees. We have a large employee base over there. We're tightly coupled with the WHO to keep pace of what's happening on the ground and making sure that our employees are safe in this circumstance. So that's our first priority right now, and as you know, it's somewhat fluid. Stepping back and just looking at China overall, it's a big market for us. It's been a big market for a while. We are encouraged that the dialogues have resulted in at least phase one of the agreement that implies lower tariffs and fewer products that fall under the tariffs. And we're encouraged that dialogues are happening and hope that they continue. But at the end of the day, like all our markets around the world, the onus is on us to build the best solutions for our customers and staying ahead of the game with innovation. As we focus on that and the things we can control, I think it'll bode well for our business and the products that we build.
Our thanks to Intel CEO Bob Swan.
Thank you so much. That was our own Vonnie Quinn and Guy Johnson talking with Bob Swan, the CEO of Intel, after their blockbuster earnings that took their shares to their highest, in rising the most in 2 years, their highest in more than a decade, I believe.
Since 2000.
Yeah, since
September 2000, yeah.
So let's bring Anand Srinivasan back in, of Bloomberg Intelligence, who's been covering this company for a long time. What was your big takeaway here?
Management is still too conservative. We have seen this before, where cloud spending usually lasts for more than just a couple of quarters. So we beg to disagree with Intel management in that this is not a one-hit wonder. This is not a one-quarter wonder. This is going to taper. This is going to taper slowly, potentially in the second half. But we think the first couple of quarters are still going to be very, very strong, potentially stronger than anyone expects, number one. Number two, on the PC side. So this is comments referencing the data center business, which is incredibly profitable. It's
about to take off. Everyone's going to get a PC.
Right. So listen, don't make fun of it, because everybody still needs a PC and things are breaking down. So thus far, the incentive has been that corporates are upgrading their PC because Windows 7 is being de-supported. Everybody's moving to Windows 10, for which you need a new PC to be able to handle the workload. But all of a sudden, the large enterprises have moved, but small and medium businesses are a little slow on the upgrade cycle here. So we think that effect is going to linger. That's point number one. Point number two is there are other small pockets of growth within the PC market. Yes, growth, Lisa, growth. Gaming. Minor detail, gaming, they're also very expensive PCs. And last but certainly not least, consumer PCs are getting old, breaking down. They have to be upgraded too. So we think the PC cycle is also going to be okay.
All right, so...
hold on a second. Next is like what, the Xerox machine?
Staplers.
Hey, listen, if you print a 0% PC growth number, right, Intel's PC business will do positive low single digits. That's good business. That's profitable business. So we can't knock it.
Okay. Anand Srinivasan, thanks so much for joining us. Pitching the PCs. Everybody's still got a PC on their desk. I mean, right?
Well, I mean,
whoever needs to do real work.
Yeah. Whoever has to do real work. Yes, I have a laptop at home.
Right.
I don't have like the big massive thing. Do you?
No, I don't.
And how many people are using their phones increasingly, and especially as they get bigger, they can kind of pair. But the point is that they don't really. And then if you see people using their like iPads, they usually have those keyboards that unfold as well, because it's very difficult to do otherwise.
I'm sticking with Anand. His analysis is always spot on, I found. Anand Srinivasan, Senior Semiconductor and Hardware Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, giving some commentary on Intel. Great quarter from the company, stock up 9%, the highest level since 2000. CEO Bob Swan on Bloomberg Television with Vonnie Quinn and Guy Johnson, giving us his thoughts on the future of the company. Markets trading off slightly. S&P down 16 points. For Lisa Abramowitz, my co-host and colleague, I'm Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. That saying, success breeds success.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
Got big plans for 2020? Capture and share every highlight on a gorgeous iPhone 11 with an ultra-wide camera. In Tesco Mobile's big January sale, you can get the latest iPhone for £40.75 a month with double data. That's a mighty 20 gigs. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of January. Was 10 gigs, now 20 gigs. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The Sky Broadband sale ends soon. Get a massive 30% off superfast broadband and anytime calls. It's now just £25 a month for 18 months. So you can stream, share, play or tweet in the living room, bedroom, hey, any room you like. It's usually £37 a month, but now it's just £25 a month for 18 months plus £19.95 setup. So what are you waiting for? Offer ends 6th of Feb. Visit sky.com today.
Sky Fibre network areas. Speeds vary by location. Prices may change during contract. Terms apply.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power, where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Drew Armstrong on the CDC is confirming a second case of the coronavirus here in the United States. Kevin Cerulli from Washington on Democrats making their final push to get witnesses called in President Trump's impeachment trial. And Katie Greifeld on the dimming prospects for ultra-long U.S. bonds. So, Drew, thanks for being here. Give us the latest. We have the CDC confirming two, although we have some word from Capitol Hill. There may be a third on the way.
Yeah, there's a second case that was confirmed in Illinois a little bit earlier today by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And then lawmakers in Capitol Hill just got a closed-door briefing from federal health officials. And coming out of that, several lawmakers mentioned that there was a third case that was expected to be confirmed shortly. We know that federal health officials and state and local folks are monitoring about 60 people. This is mostly folks who've come back from the Wuhan area in China where the outbreak is centered. And they do expect there to be more of these as the days and weeks go on.
How do we gauge the level of concern of the CDC? We know the WHO yesterday said it's a Chinese health crisis, not yet a global health crisis.
Yeah, the differentiating factor here right now is, all of the infections so far seem to be happening in China. That makes it a regional case. People who are coming back to the States and being diagnosed, they got infected there. You don't see people in the U.S. infecting other folks in the U.S., meaning you've got a reservoir of disease here and its own kind of self-perpetuating thing. I think that's the difference between this being a China issue that has some tentacles out to the rest of the world and a truly global outbreak.
It's fairly early going so far, but what is the treatment? If someone has it, what do you do?
Right now, most of these patients that we've heard from, certainly in the U.S., are mostly being monitored. Everybody's being described as stable. The symptoms resemble, a flu or a cold. It is being described as pneumonia-like. It is a severe respiratory infection. So, as far as we know, a lot of the treatments are going to be similar to that. Right now, there is not a vaccine. There is not a medicine that is approved to attack this specifically. So, most of the care is likely to be supportive in nature.
Okay, thank you so much to Drew Armstrong. Always good to hear from him on health issues. Now we're going to go to Kevin Cerulli. We like to hear from him on impeachment. He's down in Washington. So the final day, the third day for the Democrats, what do we expect? They really want to get these witnesses called. Do they have a chance?
No, look, I'm going to be really, really candid here. Republican strategists that I talk with who have been working on the impeachment issue and working with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell have all independently told me that it is increasingly unlikely that they would be able to do that. Now, that, of course, could change if there were to be a last-minute twist in this. But again, the process that Leader McConnell has orchestrated here would increasingly look like that would be unlikely. I can also tell you that the anticipation from the White House is that this trial will likely be wrapped up by the president's State of the Union address on February 4th. Meanwhile, Democrats pushing forcefully here. Day 3, as you mentioned, David, in terms of their arguments to remove President Trump from office. The president, for his part, tweeting out earlier today that he's disappointed that the Republicans are going to have to make their case on Saturday morning, which, according to the president, is not the best primetime television viewing hours, David.
And in the meantime, the president's business continues as usual, at least political business. He's got a big rally he's going to appear for the first president ever today.
I was struck by this. He's got a massive rally planned for today. He's going to attend the March for Life. This is the first time that a president has done this. I was traveling, of course, all week with the Secretary of State. The Secretary also mentioning that in a speech that he gave in Sumner, Florida, inland Florida, another conservative base that they're trying to win in the state of Florida. So this is something that is really going to be positioned for the base. We should also note the president making news to our very own Jordan Fabian, who asked him on a flight gaggle, as it's known, about a Middle East peace plan that is anticipated, according to the president, to come out sometime before the Israelis come visit the White House next week.
Yeah, exactly. We have our calendars circled for that possible Mideast peace plan at long last. So thanks so much to Kevin Sorelli. And by the way, welcome back to Washington after that triumphant tour of Latin America. And now we're going to turn to Katie Greifeld right here in New York, because Secretary of Treasury Mnuchin made some news over in Davos about the 20-year bond and the ultra-long band. What's the significance of all this, Katie?
Well, the interesting thing for bond traders in this news that Bloomberg broke was that this will slightly extend the maturity of the outstanding Treasury debt. And that's interesting because that probably means that Treasury isn't going to adjust the sizes of the auctions too much. You know, the weighted average maturity, they're not really paying that much attention to it. So the thinking was that perhaps, they'd issue more shorter-term debt to sort of keep maturity and duration stable. But with these comments, it's clear that they're not going to try to tinker around with auction sizes too much.
Exactly. And the real question I guess I have is, what does that do, all the things being equal, to the yield curve when you change the adjustment of the maturities that you're issuing?
Right. Well, duration is scary in some senses because it's basically sensitivity to interest rate moves, which means if yields spike, or bonds with longer duration could be open to more losses. So Mnuchin didn't say by how much this would alter the duration, but he said it wouldn't be that dramatic of an increase. So that, we're not going to see it dramatically expand and open up, bondholders to too much losses here.
Yeah, but bond traders tend to be sensitive about these things. We want to follow. Okay, thank you so much to Katie Greifeld for that report. And now let's check on how the markets are doing today and reactions to today's top stories. Joining us now is Kayla Line. So it looks a bit risk-off, and I wonder if it has to do with Drew Armstrong's report on coronavirus.
Well, in part, it definitely does. I mean, you have to consider that when we came into the open this morning, we were higher, near record highs, and we have really sharply sold off as confirmed cases in the U.S. of 2, possibly 3 of these viruses. The S&P 500 right now is down by about 0.6%. Actually, this could be the worst day for the S&P in about 3 weeks since January 3rd. You even have seen the NASDAQ flip into the red, which also was seeing some sustained strength earlier. And while investors are coming out of stocks, they're rushing into those safer haven assets. The 10-year yield is now back below 170. We're down 4 basis points today.
Wow. And so if it's not coronavirus, what could be contributed to this beyond coronavirus?
I mean, beyond that, you did have a disappointing manufacturing PMI this morning, 945. That number came in just slightly below estimates. So I think that started more of the risk-off tone. That's when we started to see the S&P 500 decline, but it really has accelerated as these reports of the virus has circulated. And you're seeing that underneath the surface of the market, too, when you look at specific industry groups like travel stocks. The likes of United and American Airlines, cruise stocks are all down by roughly 4% today, as are some of those online travel agencies, the likes of Trip.com, TripAdvisor, et cetera, are lower today, as well as some of the casino stocks that are exposed to Macau, for example. So you're seeing this really percolate through the market, and it's a really red day for those exposed to China.
Looks like it. A weak Friday as of now. We got a little ways to go, but as of now. Okay, thanks so much to Kayla Lines for that market report. And now we're going to turn to Mark Crumpton. He's here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, thank you. Following up on the coronavirus story, U.S. health officials are about to confirm a 3rd case of the Wuhan virus in the United States. That's according to 3 senators speaking to reporters in Washington. Earlier today, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirmed a second case in the United States, saying a Chicago woman in her 60s is infected. Last month, she visited Wuhan, a Chinese city at the center of the outbreak. Officials are monitoring more than 60 people in 22 states. The virus has killed at least 25 people in China and sickened more than 800. Democratic impeachment managers have one more day to convince Senate Republicans. They want to subpoena witnesses and documents to help make their case against President Trump. To do that, they'll need at least 4 Republicans to vote with the 47 Democrats. The president's lawyers begin their arguments tomorrow. The European Union says more time's needed to unravel a dispute between countries involved in the Iran nuclear agreement. Last week, Britain, France, and Germany triggered the accord's dispute resolution mechanism to force Iran into talks on possible violations of the 2015 deal. If no solution is found, it could result in new sanctions on Iran. Yemen's government wants to resume direct peace talks with Iranian-backed Houthi rebels to end a brutal 5-year conflict. That's according to the country's U.S. envoy, who says getting the insurgents back to the negotiating table will require both military pressure and international diplomacy. The 5 years of fighting has created what the United Nations has called the world's worst humanitarian disaster. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, President Trump is about to speak at the March for Life in Washington, becoming the first U.S. president ever to do so. We'll discuss how important social issues will be in the upcoming election with our panel. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Deliver this country, city, and county. Oh, Lord, every city and town from famine, disease.
Financial leaders enjoy talking with.
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
The Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
When it comes to music, I've heard it all. Pink Floyd, Sean Paul, Slipknot. But in the Which Test Lab, hearing isn't enough. When we test headphones, we really listen. Not just to the music, but to the stuff that gets in the way. The traffic, the chatter, all that. Mind the gap. We simulate the loudest commute to find you the headphones that cancel out the noise. So you know we're only recommending the best.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
This ain't just lunch. It's the KFC fill-up lunch for $1.99. It's mighty fine. Tingles your spine, so jump in line while there's still time. 1 mini fillet burger, 2 hot wings and fries, all for a fist-pumping $1.99. What the... Fill up on the fill-up lunch for only 1 more week at KFC. Every day until 26th of January until 3 p.m. at participating restaurants, subject to availability.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Driven by things such as abortion.
You know, to a large degree, they will. You know, the question we always ask in these battleground states is, you know, among blue-collar voters, swing voters in particular, they're going to vote on the economy or are they going to vote on values? They tend to be a bit more conservative on values. This president is making a clear and unequivocal statement about where he stands. And from his vantage point politically, what he's doing is he is solidifying that base, perhaps more than any other president has by coming out today. He runs the risk, however, of shoring up the Democratic base on the opposite end by taking such a strong stand. And that in itself makes abortion and some of these other gay rights and some of these other conservative issues the ultimate wedge issue. And now where do swing voters in Wisconsin, Michigan land? Right. That's that's where the other issues come in.
Rachel, as you see the politics of it, is there any risk at all of the president going too far on this issue? And let me talk specifically about suburban women. There's been some reporting, including in some recent elections, that maybe even in some red state, there's been some defection from suburban women on some of the social values issues. Is there any danger that he actually could alienate some of the people he needs?
Well, I think when you look at what the polling shows, most Americans actually support restrictions on late-term abortions. And I think, President Trump has really responded to, I think, the increasing extremism of Democrats on this issue. I mean, you had a governor of a state say that it was okay for a baby born after a botched abortion to not receive medical care. That's extreme. That's infanticide. And that has galvanized, I don't think the left realizes how that has galvanized social conservatives on this issue. And so, I think a lot of what he's proposing is pretty simple. A lot of it has been religious freedom, conscience protections, simply saying, late-term abortions aren't going to happen, and allowing people to make choices. And so when you look at his agenda on this issue, it hasn't been that extreme, and I think it's in line with a lot of the polling which shows across the country, people are more or less in the middle. They support restrictions on late-term abortions after 3 months, and that's a lot of what President Trump has been focused on.
So John, pick up on that, what Rachel just said about people tend to be somewhere in the middle, that they don't want anybody to have an abortion whenever they want. On the other hand, they are in favor of some restrictions on it. Is there anybody on the Democratic side running for president, any of the candidates, who may triangulate a little bit here and say, look, I am for abortion, but I'm against some of the extreme things actually that Rachel just talked about?
There is not one candidate out there who takes that position at all. And so this is the ultimate wedge issue here, and this is why we're talking about it today. Because for every solid Republican and conservative that the president brings into his corner, he is also alienating a possible swing or soft liberal supporter. Remember, we're at about 50% now of all voters who say that they will never vote for Donald Trump. The Democrats' problem is that they need to be sure that these folks come out and vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is. And an issue like this, taking such a strong and actually one-sided view on abortion, could actually help bring some of those voters out.
Rachel Bovard,
can I just add?
Sorry, please.
Yes, yeah, please. Can I just add, to the point that no Democrat takes the position of infanticide, increasingly the progressive base has pushed them to take that position. Just last year, there was a vote in the Senate on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which simply said if a baby's born alive after a botched abortion, they deserve medical care. All 44 Senate Democrats voted against that. So they are now on record not supporting care for an aborted infant that manages to survive. So I do think increasingly the progressive base is pulling the Democratic Party to the left on this issue, and Trump and I think a lot of Republicans are responding to it.
We're talking with Rachel Bovard and John Zogby, our political panel here. So, Rachel, I want to come back on what President Trump has done on this issue, and I think that many Republicans say one of the things he's done is Supreme Court nominations, putting people on the Supreme Court. We have a big abortion case up there in the court during the middle of the term right now. Could this entire landscape change depending on how that comes out? We did, after all, have a lot of Republicans assume that when it came to Obamacare, the court would go a certain way, and we had Chief Justice Roberts go the other way. Could it change between now and November?
Yeah, one thing I've learned, you don't ever want to predict the Supreme Court. It can go either way. But this abortion case is important. It's not as big of a sea change, I think, as everyone's making it out to be. It's just about whether or not doctors should have admitting privileges. Abortion doctors should have admitting privileges at local hospitals. But it is going to be a seminal case because the Supreme Court doesn't often take these cases. But I do think, going back to this base for President Trump, this is why a lot of evangelicals, conservative Catholics came to the polls for him, is because they knew he would put conservative justices in place on the Supreme Court, because more and more frequently, because Congress fails to do its job, these policy issues are being litigated in the courts. And so those appointments matter more than they ever have before. And Trump has delivered on all these issues for his base.
John Zogby, let's spend a minute or two at least here on impeachment. There's an impeachment trial going on, after all, up on the Capitol Hill. A pretty historic event, although a lot of people are not paying too much attention to it. Is there any prospect at this point that, in fact, they'll get those 4 Republican senators to vote to call witnesses?
No, they're trying awfully hard to do it, but no, there is really no chance. In particular, you had some very strong statements by Jerry Nadler and Adam Schiff that were deemed by some of these specific moderate Republicans to be insulting. That's not the way to win friends and influence people. I mean, bottom line here, Democrats are trying very hard to make a point. That point has been made over and over and over and over again. This issue is, president's not going to be removed from office, even though the polls float back and forth, 48% removed, 51% removed. The thing is, you're not going to remove a president of the United States who's got support in the mid-40 percentile. Remember, to get Nixon out of office all those years ago, his numbers went down to 23%, and it became a political liability. President is not viewed as a political liability by these Republicans yet.
Rachel Bovard, final thought. Come November, is this impeachment, however it comes out, and we think we know it's going to come out, is it going to factor at all in the election?
I think Democrats desperately want it to, but I don't think it's going to come out that way. I think people have made up their minds already. They are where they are. This impeachment trial isn't changing their minds. And in fact, it's turning a lot of independents off. So at the end of the day, he's going to be acquitted. I don't think it's going to weigh too strongly in the final outcome in 2020.
Okay, it looks like it's going to happen reasonably quickly. Okay, many thanks to our political panel now of Rachel Bovard and John Zogby. And you can watch and listen to the president's speech at the March for Life on the Bloomberg using the function Live Go. Still ahead here, Disney is our company in the crosshairs as the coronavirus forces the company to shut down its theme park in Shanghai. Details on that next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here. We have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Earlier on Bloomberg Television, there was a report about former Theranos CEO Elizabeth Holmes' defense in a civil case. Our reporter mentioned the company's relationship with Walmart. She misspoke and was referring to Theranos' relationship with Walgreens for on-site blood tests. We apologize for that error. It's time now for the stock of the hour. Disney is lower by more than 1% today after the company announced it will close its Shanghai Park beginning tomorrow due to fears about the coronavirus. Kayla Lyons is here with more, so I hesitated a moment because last time I looked it was down 0.5%, now it's down 1.5%.
The declines are accelerating, although I should say for the broader market the declines are steepening, so it's probably part of that larger sell-off. But for Disney, it's actually down more than 3% on the week amid concerns about the virus. News today is that they're going to close the Shanghai Park beginning tomorrow, really because they say they need to ensure the safety of not only visitors but their performers. They will open it at an unknown time. They're going to stay in close contact with the government. And I would note that their Shanghai Park they have a minority stake. Disney only owns about 43% of it. The other 57% is the Chinese government, so they may have a hand in this decision as well. We know the government is taking increasing action to stop the spread of this virus, but some of those actions include the delay or cancellation of movie openings, people closing movie theaters. That could affect Disney as well. It's not just parks revenue, but that studio and entertainment revenue at risk as well.
You anticipating, because I was going to say that is not the only investment Disney's made in China. They have Hong Kong, that they have minority interests as well, and they've really made a big push on consumer goods, on movies, on all sorts of entertainment, things like that. So Disney has really put a big bet on China.
It absolutely has. I mean, Asia as a market in general makes up about 11% of the company's revenue now. And you speak about Hong Kong. I mean, that park has had some struggles as well. It saw in the last quarter a big hit because of the protests in Hong Kong. And so now you're seeing two Asian parks potentially that have weakness in revenue and in visitors, especially when you consider this is all happening during that Lunar New Year period where a lot of people and families are traveling, and they may not be doing that anymore.
But that's not the only thing Disney's doing these days. I mean, they have Disney Plus too, which is just way outperforming what the projections were.
It really is. I mean, you even had an analyst over at Morgan Stanley, despite all of these fears about the virus, lifting his price target on Disney today because of the strength of Disney Plus, saying that it's just scaling so much faster than could be anticipated, really showing strength and it's taking hold. And if there is a bright side to look at the coronavirus through the Disney lens, not to say that it isn't obviously a horrible thing going on in China, but you have had chatter in the market that may be a boost to streaming, because instead of families over the holiday period going out to movie theaters, they may staying at home and binge watching Disney Plus or Netflix. We've seen Netflix up about 8% over the course of the past 2 days on that exact idea.
And Disney Plus, as you say, is doing really, really well, much better than what they said they thought they were going to do. At the same time, you already mentioned Netflix. You also have Amazon, and then you've got others coming in. You've got HBO Plus. You've got a lot of other things coming in. It's going to be a really crowded area pretty soon.
There is a lot of competition, but analysts seem to be pretty optimistic on Disney Plus's odds that it's going to be able to withstand that.
Kaylee, thanks so much. That's Kaylee Lyons with her report on the market. Up next, Jennifer Hillman, former member of the WTO appellate body and now with the Council on Foreign Relations, joins us to discuss efforts to reform the WTO and whether they will work. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors started out the day pushing aside their worries about the coronavirus from China by concentrating on upbeat earnings news. But that's until news broke that a second U.S. case of the virus has been confirmed, this time in Chicago. So investors gave back their gains. The Dow is dropping 115 points, NASDAQ down 41, S&P falling 20 points. Goldman Sachs wants to see more diversity in corporate America, so the big Wall Street bank, the largest underwriter of IPOs, says from now on it will not take companies public if all of their directors are straight white men. The initiative goes into effect in July. And Colgate-Palmolive is buying the oral care startup Hello Products, which makes toothpaste, mouthwash, toothbrushes, and floss. Financial terms weren't disclosed. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
You're not supposed to begin the race before the starting gun, but this is a different kind of race.
Let's go live to London and get the very latest.
Karen Moscow.
Airlines could soon be under pressure.
Nathan Hager.
Apple has reversed course on Hong Kong.
Business news, interviews, and analysis first.
We get another key reading on inflation.
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, ABC News is reporting that it has a recording that appears to show President Trump saying he wanted Marie Yovanovitch removed as ambassador to Ukraine. Although ABC did not provide audio, the network says on the tape, a voice that appears to be Mr. Trump says, quote, "Get rid of her, get her out tomorrow," end quote. If accurate, the recording backs up testimony in the House impeachment hearings that the president had Yovanovitch removed because she was viewed as an obstacle to his efforts to press Ukraine into investigating Democrat Joe Biden and his son. The impeachment trial continues about half an hour from now. House Democrats have one more day to present their case. As we've been reporting, the president is set to become the first U.S. president to speak in person to anti-abortion protesters at the March for Life rally. The event in Washington is held every year and is getting underway at this hour. It marks the Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade decision in 1973 that protected the right to an abortion. The president spoke to the rally by satellite previously. London police say they'll start using live facial recognition cameras to catch criminals. It's an effort that human rights groups call, quote, a dangerous and sinister step. The technology looks for faces in crowds to see if they are a match on any watch lists for serious crimes. Metropolitan Police say it will only be used in specific parts of the city where offenders are most likely to be caught. Turkish President Recep Erdogan wants other countries in the Mediterranean region to put pressure on Libyan forces to abide by a tentative truce. President Erdogan spoke at the opening ceremony of a Turkish-German university's new campus with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Talks between Erdogan and Merkel were expected to also focus on the future of migration, a deal there between Turkey and the European Union. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg.
We're talking about a whole new structure for the deal, or we'll have to do something. But the World Trade Organization has been very unfair to the United States for many, many years.
That was President Trump speaking at Davos on Wednesday of this week. Joining us now from Washington is Jennifer Hillman, Senior Fellow for Trade and International Political Economy at the Council on Foreign Relations. She's also a former member of the WTO appellate body. So welcome, Jennifer. Great to have you with us. First, let's pick up on what President Trump said about reform of WTO. He appeared with the head of the WTO, Roberto Azevedo. What are the reforms that need to be done, and can they get done?
Well, again, I think it's great news that they're at least talking to one another, and that the president is appearing to get a little bit more engaged in what's going on at the WTO. But we have to understand that we're starting from a fairly bad place in that the United States has blocked the appointment of any members to sit on what is the functional equivalent of the WTO Supreme Court, its appellate body, so that as of December of last year, the WTO appellate body could no longer function. And what that really means is that if countries are found to be violating the trade rules, they can get out from under those obligations just by filing a notice of appeal to a non-existent appellate body. So we're starting from a place in which the United States has done a very good job of burning the house down without really saying anything about how it is that we're going to build it back up again. So the fact that there was this meeting and that the president at least appears to be ready to get engaged in what do we need to do to reform the WTO is at least good news, or better than we've been. I think that reforms have to come on both sides of the house. In other words, there has to be reforms and improvement to this dispute settlement mechanism so that the rules themselves are binding on countries. But secondly, there has to be reforms that will allow the WTO to reach new agreements more readily. The negotiating function of the WTO is the other place that you really are going to need to see reforms.
So give us a précis, if you would, on 2020 in terms of trade. I mean, certainly last year, 2019, there was an awful lot of U.S.-China. Now we have a phase one agreement. They say they're going to go to phase two. If I give you a choice, and you may have another choice that I'm not giving you, U.S.-China on the one hand, USMCA is basically taken care of, it appears, North America. Europe, the president in that same news conference said we're really going after Europe. And then we have U.S.-UK, where we have an announcement that just came out that Boris Johnson apparently has signed the EU withdrawal agreement, which may free him up to negotiate with us. What are going to be the biggest trade issues this year?
So again, I think basically all three of them, and I think you're exactly right, because the context of all of this is occurring. There's been a whole lot of unilateral and bilateral activity by the United States, much of it, if you will, in violation of the WTO rules. So it begs the question of whether we're now moving in a direction of managed trade, bilateral trade, mini deals, or whether we still are interested in the bigger, broader WTO multilateral rules. And I think the honest answer is we're going to have to do both. So specifically on the U.S.-UK side, I think it's very interesting that the Secretary Mnuchin said they think we're going to get a U.S.-UK agreement by the end of this year. For what it's worth, I think it's pretty unrealistic. Why? Because most U.S. companies are going to want to know first what's the relationship between Europe and the United Kingdom. Because an awful lot of what U.S. companies do when they invest in the U.K., what they really want is access to the European market in addition to take Ford as a company that's doing a lot of business in the U.K. Single largest brand of cars sold in the United Kingdom right now is a Ford car. But Ford is in the UK in large part in order to sell cars into the rest of Europe. Right now, Ford can do that duty-free, tariff-free, and regulatory-free. Once Brexit happens, if there is no agreement between the UK and the EU, now all of a sudden Ford's got to pay 10% duty on every car moving across the channel, and it has to have its car re-inspected. So how interested is Ford in a US-UK agreement is going to really depend on whether or not what is the relationship between the EU and the UK. So I'm not sure that it's realistic to think that we're going to get a US-UK agreement until and unless there's something worked out with the EU. Troubling is, I think, the potential for a major trade war with the European Union. Again, by way of context, if you look at it, we already have tariffs on the European Union steel and aluminum, and Europe has retaliated against those, so Europe has tariffs on us. We've just put tariffs on olives, wine, cheese, a whole lot of things, up to the tune of $7.5 billion because Europe was found to violate its WTO obligations as a result of subsidies to Airbus. Coming soon this year is going to be a ruling that will allow Europe to retaliate against the United States because of our subsidies to Boeing. And over all of this is the threat of maybe we're going to have tariffs on autos under this national security investigation. So I think clearly looming is major trade tensions with the European Union. In the background is potentially some kind of an agreement with the UK. And over all of it is the real need to figure out how do we get the multilateral, the bigger, broader base set of rules going at the WTO.
We're talking with Jennifer Hillman from the Council on Foreign Relations. Sort of as a final note here, what role does agriculture play in this with respect to Europe and potentially with respect to the UK as well? That's something that apparently was addressed in the Phase 1 agreement with a commitment to buy more products. As we know, agriculture is very sensitive in both Europe and in the UK.
Right. And here again, you're looking right at a huge dilemma. So the beginning of this idea of a US-EU agreement came about in a meeting between President Juncker of the European Union and President Trump last year. And the parameters of that on paper are that the agreement will cover only industrial goods, not agriculture. So the European Union says we never agreed to put agriculture on the table. And on the other hand, obviously from the United States side, the view is, we don't want to do an agreement unless and until it covers agriculture. So even the scope of what an agreement between the United States and the European Union would be is still very much up for grabs and a lot of recriminations back and forth. But I think for many in America, the key market access that they really want into Europe is in the agriculture area.
Okay, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today. That's Jennifer Hillman. She's Senior Fellow for Trade and International Political Economy at the Council on Foreign Relations. Coming up here, the CDC has announced a new case of that deadly China virus in the United States. We'll get more on the medical response with Dr. Shi Chen of Yale University. That's next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, You can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 6-pack of Mr. Kipling Angel Slices, now half price, from £1.80 to just 90p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Some people's description, they do not develop any symptom until the 2 days before the death. And they even have normal temperature. So it's very hard to distinguish. And also it's hard to distinguish from the common cold or flu. Because this year, the flu season is also very lasting, very long, and hurt a lot of people. So it's hard to distinguish these two. And the fundamental issue is the overstretched hospital system due to the over-investment in hospital system in the last couple of years in China's health reform, which puts the primary care, the gatekeeper of this health system, at the weak position. So they are not able to attract more patients who have mild symptom. So they should not go to the hospital because 90% of them may only have the flu or may only have a cold. But since they are not distinguishable and due to the social media effect, they have fear, they have panic, so they choose to go. So that's the major issue compared to like 17 years ago when SARS outbroke. The social media was not that prevalent, so which caused less fear and panic at that time compared to today. So we are in a very different world today.
We're talking with Dr. Shi Chen of the Yale Public Health School. So, Dr. Chen, you said we don't know enough yet about the origins and the transmission. Are we confident it originated in Wuhan? And is there any indication, because I've heard, again, some reports of this, it might have started in, they have a live animal market there.
Yes, they are called the seafood market, but actually the seafood market sell overwhelmingly more wild animals compared to the seafood. And there are all kinds of wild animals they sell, including the snakes, the civet cats, the raccoon dogs, and all kinds of these things. So that's why in the scientific community, people saying that this was due to the snake, but one day later they changed their mind, saying that it could be due to civet dog, and today they also changed. So there's no confirmed source of the infection. And the source of infection is so important. If it is widely spread, kind of wild animals, that means the infection rate and the scale of this infection could be even higher, depending on the origin of this virus.
Dr. Chen, what do we know so far about the Chinese government reaction to this? There was some criticism back when SARS happened. You referred to that earlier. Does the Chinese government appear to have learned a great deal from that experience and improved their response?
Indeed, I believe so, especially in the central government. They acted very swiftly by sharing the gene sequence of the pathogen. And they also waived all the fees for the healthcare because in China it was out-of-pocket model. People have to pay upfront in order to get treated. But now for this disease, they do not need to pay anything. And China already categorized this to be grade A infectious disease. So there's a travel ban, the mandatory travel ban for all patients and people in close contact with them also in the travel ban. So that's why it's more effective. But the local officials still may have something to improve because they share their news about the human-to-human transmission, the possibility. They shared like much later. They delayed the message being sending to the public. So I think that's the major things to be blamed.
Yeah. Dr. Chen, do we have public health experts, such as yourself, in labs around the world right now working on this?
Yes, in Yale School of Public Health, we just put together a news article about the frequently asked and unanswered questions about the source, the transmission, how to avoid, and how to prevent and control this disease. So it's on the web page of our school website, Yale School of Public Health. And we have more colleagues in this field across the United States. Johns Hopkins University, Harvard, many other institutions are working very closely monitoring this. And even today, the Lancet, the journal in UK, they published 5 articles about this disease. 2 articles are original articles with real detailed data.
Okay, Dr. Shi Chen, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We're going to have more with Dr. Chen coming up in the next hour on Bloomberg Radio. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on Bloomberg Radio, coming to you from New York.
What do you count? Interest rates?
If you get marginally higher interest rates, does that bring the PE multiple in?
Trade figures?
China driving a tectonic shift in the availability of money.
Employment data?
What is happening with the headcount?
You could just leave all that to us.
Is it a one-and-done tariff adjustment?
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell. Right where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Much of the talk at Davos this week was about climate change. So in this week's episode of Bloomberg Wall Street Week, we sat down with former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, TIAA CEO Roger Ferguson, and JetBlue's head of sustainability, she's Sophia Mendelson, to consider what could actually be done, particularly in the airline industry, beyond merely talking about it all.
Each airline flies their plane differently. What we're doing is taking care of the carbon on the customer's behalf without asking the customer to make a sacrifice. We're not saying squeeze your knees in or give up first class. We're saying flying needs to happen. You need to be on our aircraft, and that creates carbon emissions, which we need to take care of as a cost of doing business.
So how about the speed at which you fly the planes?
So flying